It was Christmas Eve, and the house was filled with the warm glow of lights, the scent of freshly baked cookies, and the sound of holiday music drifting through the speakers. It was supposed to be a time for family, for connection, and for joy. But as the night wore on, I began to feel a sense of unease in the air. Something was off. Something was about to change. We had all gathered at my parents' house as usual: Mom, Dad, my sister, my brother, and me. The dinner table was filled with delicious food, the conversation was lively, and everything seemed perfect. At least, that's how it appeared on the surface. But beneath that shiny exterior, something was brewing. It was my sister Emma, who had always been the strong one in the family, the one who took charge of everything: work, home, and especially family matters. She was the one who always made sure everything was perfect, that no one was left behind, and that we all stuck together as a family, or so I thought. As we were finishing up dessert, Emma suddenly stood up. The room fell silent and everyone's eyes turned toward her. Her expression was serious, almost too serious for the Christmas cheer we were supposed to be feeling. "I think it's time we all had a conversation," she said, her voice unwavering, even though the tension in her words was palpable. The entire room fell silent. "I don't want to make this awkward," she continued, "but there's something we've been needing to address for a long time. We've all talked about it, and we've decided it's time." I could feel my heart racing. What was she talking about? Was this some kind of joke? I looked around the room and saw that my parents weren't making eye contact with me. My brother was staring at his plate, and I couldn't even tell if he was listening. It was just Emma standing there like some kind of judge about to announce a verdict. "We voted," Emma said, the words hitting me like a punch to the stomach, "and we've decided to cut you off. Your name." I froze. Cut me off? I couldn't breathe. I tried to make sense of what she was saying, but everything felt like it was spinning. My own sister was standing there telling me I was no longer part of the family. The words didn't feel real. It was as if the world around me was slowing down, and I was drowning in a sea of confusion and disbelief. I tried to speak, to ask for an explanation, but my voice caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" I managed to choke out. "Why? What did I do?" Emma's face was emotionless as she looked at me, her eyes cold. "We've been talking for months about your behavior, about how you've treated the rest of us, and it's time. You've made it clear that you're not going to change. We gave you chances, but enough is enough." My chest felt tight, and my vision blurred. I couldn't process what I was hearing. Cut off? From my own family? Was this really happening? The room was still. The only sound was the soft hum of the Christmas lights flickering against the darkness of the room. I could feel the weight of their words pressing down on me, suffocating me. I stared at my sister, my own flesh and blood, who had just declared that I was no longer a part of the family. I couldn't believe it. This couldn't be real. I turned my gaze to my parents, desperate for them to say something, anything, that would stop this madness. But they didn't. They sat there, silent and still, their eyes avoiding mine. My father's face was creased with what appeared to be a mixture of discomfort and shame. My mother's eyes were downcast, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. They weren't looking at me. They weren't defending me. I felt like I didn't exist to them in that moment. I tried again. "What are you talking about, Emma? You can't just make decisions for everyone. Why are you doing this?" My voice broke as I spoke. I felt shattered. Emma folded her arms across her chest, and I could see the cold determination in her eyes. "You've been selfish. You've hurt us too many times. Your name. You've taken and taken, but you've never given back. You think we don't see it? How you always expect us to bail you out, to put up with your drama, your behavior. You never change, and we've had enough. We've all agreed. We voted, and the answer was clear. No, Emma. This isn't how family works. You can't just cut someone off like this," I almost shouted, desperation lacing my words. But even as I spoke, I knew it was pointless. There was no one standing up for me, not even my parents. My brother, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke up, but his voice was distant. "I'm sorry, your name, but it's true. We've tried to help you, we really have, but you just keep pushing us away. We can't do this anymore." His words were like a slap across my face. My own brother, the one I had always been closest to, had turned his back on me too. I couldn't believe it. It was as if I had suddenly become a stranger to everyone in the room. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not now. Not in front of them. "You think I haven't been trying? You think I don't care about all of you? Every time I try, you just push me away, make me feel like I'm not good enough, like I don't belong. Do you know how much that hurts? You know how much I've sacrificed for this family, and this is how I'm repaid?" Emma's face softened for a brief second, and for the first time in the conversation, I saw a flicker of guilt. But it vanished quickly. She shook her head. "I'm sorry, but we've made up our minds. This isn't personal. This is just what's best for all of us." Best for all of us? How could she say that? How could she sit there, acting like she knew what was best for me, for all of us? It felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't escape. Suddenly, I felt something inside me shift. I had spent so long trying to gain their approval, trying to fit into a mold that they had created for me. But now I realized I didn't need their approval. If they wanted to cut me out, that was their decision. But I wasn't going to let them dictate my worth any longer. "Fine," I said, my voice steady but filled with anger. "You want to cut me off? Fine, but don't think for a second that you've won. I don't need you to define me anymore. I'll prove to you that I can thrive without your approval. This family, it doesn't own me. I own myself." I stood up from the table, the tension in my chest now replaced with a sense of clarity. The betrayal still hurt, but it was also the wake-up call I needed. I wasn't going to beg them for anything anymore. I had my own life to live, and if they couldn't see that, then it was their loss, not mine. With my head held high, I turned to leave, but before I stepped out, I glanced back one last time. "Merry Christmas, everyone," I said coldly, my heart heavy but my resolve stronger than ever. As I walked out of the house, the cold night air hit me like a slap in the face. I felt like I was walking away from everything I had ever known, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of freedom. My chest, which had been tight with anger and confusion just moments ago, now felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. This wasn't the end, I told myself. It was a new beginning. I didn't know where I was going at first, just walked aimlessly down the street. The night was quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. I couldn't help but replay the events of the evening over and over in my mind. How could they do that? How could they vote to cut me off like I was nothing more than an inconvenience? But even as I asked myself those questions, I knew deep down that the answer didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going to waste my time wondering why they had turned their backs on me. I had done everything I could to be a part of their lives, to be there for them when they needed me, and this is how they repaid me? I had to move on. I stopped walking and stood at the edge of a park, staring out into the darkness. The world felt so big and yet, at that moment, so small. I was alone, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like that was a bad thing. I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was free. Free from the expectations, free from the judgment, free from the suffocating need for approval. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer let anyone, even my own family, define my worth. If they couldn't accept me for who I was, if they couldn't understand my struggles, then I would find my own way. I had always been capable of so much more than I had allowed myself to believe. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. I pulled it out and saw a message from my best friend, Sarah. "Hey, just heard. I'm so sorry. Want to talk? I'm here for you." I stared at the message for a moment, feeling the familiar warmth of her support. She had always been there for me, through everything. And here she was, offering a lifeline just when I needed it most. I quickly typed a reply, my fingers moving faster than my thoughts. "I'm okay, really. Just need some time. but thanks. I don't know what to do next, but I'll figure it out." As soon as I sent the message, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, I knew I would figure things out on my own. I wasn't going to let the opinions of others dictate my future. The next few weeks were a blur of emotions, but something had changed in me. I threw myself into my work, into projects I had neglected while trying to keep my family happy. I found joy in the small victories, the quiet moments where I could just be myself. And slowly, bit by bit, the pain of what had happened at Christmas started to fade. I didn't need their approval to succeed. I had everything I needed within myself. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer afraid of being alone. One day, as I walked into the office, my manager David called me into his office. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when I walked in, he smiled at me and motioned for me to sit. "I've been hearing some great things about your recent work," he said. "Your ideas have been really impressive, and I wanted to let you know that I'm considering you for a promotion. I think you've got a lot of potential, and I'd like to see you take on more responsibilities." My heart skipped a beat. A promotion? After everything that had happened, this was the last thing I expected. But as I sat there, listening to David's words, something inside me clicked. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, not because of the approval of my family or anyone else, but because I had earned it on my own. "I appreciate that," I said, a smile slowly spreading across my face. "I'm ready for the challenge." The following weeks were a whirlwind. With the promotion on the table, my work took on a new intensity. I threw myself into every task, every project, with an energy I hadn't known I was capable of. The fire inside me was burning stronger than ever. For the first time, I wasn't working to prove my worth to anyone. I wasn't trying to meet some external expectation. I was doing it for myself. The realization that I had all I needed to succeed, without anyone's validation, was both freeing and empowering. I kept thinking back to that Christmas night, the sting of my family's rejection, the cutting words of my sister. But every time I did, it became less and less of a burden. It became fuel. The rejection had hurt, no doubt, but it had also awakened something deep inside me. The undeniable truth that I was more than the sum of their opinions. I didn't need them to tell me I was worthy. I already knew I was. One evening, a month after that fateful Christmas, I sat at my desk reviewing the final details of the project I'd been leading. As I clicked send on the email to submit the project proposal to upper management, I couldn't help but smile. I had built this from the ground up, and it was ready to make a real impact. I had made it happen, no one else. And then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma, my sister. I hadn't heard from her since that night, and truthfully, I wasn't sure I was ready to face her again, but something in my gut told me I had to read it. "Hey, your name? I've been thinking a lot about Christmas and everything that happened. I'm sorry for what I said, and I want to make things right. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. My heart wavered between wanting to talk and not knowing if I was ready to open that door again. Could I forgive her? Could I allow myself to let her back into my life? After a long pause, I replied, "I'm open to talking, but on my terms. I'm not the same person I was before. Things are different now." I wasn't sure where this conversation would go, but I knew one thing. I had grown, and I wasn't going to apologize for that. The next day, we met at a cafe. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us carefully choosing our words, trying to bridge the gap that had formed between us. Emma apologized genuinely, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in her. She admitted that she had been wrong, that she had let her own fears and insecurities drive her actions. But as we spoke, I realized something. I had forgiven her a long time ago, not because of anything she had done, but because I had learned to forgive myself. I had learned to move forward, to stop waiting for others to accept me, and to accept myself first. "I've changed, Emma," I said, looking her in the eyes. "I don't need to be part of the family's definition of success anymore. I've built my own path, And I'm proud of it." She nodded, her eyes softening. "I'm proud of you too. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." We spent the next hour talking about everything: our past, our mistakes, and how we could move forward as individuals and as family. The conversation wasn't perfect, and things weren't magically fixed, but for the first time I felt like we were meeting on equal ground. I wasn't the one begging for her approval, and she wasn't the one dismissing me. We were simply two people trying to rebuild something that had been broken. As I left the cafe that day, I realized that the true victory wasn't in the apology or in the promotion. It was in the understanding that I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. I had found the strength to define my own success, and in doing so, I had found peace. The family dynamics would never be the same, and maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to create new traditions, new ways of connecting, and maybe, just maybe, I could finally be at peace with the person I had become.